Make it so the world never forgets me.
She beamed back at me, eyes ablaze with excitement.
That's what I want.
What? How would I even...
I stammered. This was the kind of statement you made drunk at 2 a.m., not to your best friend over lunch when discussing birthday wishes. She walked into my dorm and started pacing around my room.
It's all part of my two-pronged attack. We make a great story of our experiences that nobody will ever forget. And you get to keep all the fame and glory.
She put her hands on her hips and laughed.
You can thank me later for all those eyes on you.
From anyone else, this would come over as arrogant and self-absorbed, but in the right hands, it was downright endearing. Olivia was that type of person. She oozed eccentricity, and I was always in her social shadow. She lit up a room every time she walked into it. The attention was always on her, and I was secondary. Not that I minded, of course. She was a blessing to my social anxiety and years of crippling PTSD. I was so lucky to have her choose me as her best friend. Or maybe we were just destined to be friends from day one. Who can say? All I know is that we bonded over a shared love of watching TV and morning runs. The rest was history.
Dude, you know you have all the power at your fingertips.
She wiggled her hands and laughed.
Literally.
I was always confident around her or any one of my close-knit friends, but this dumbfounded me.
You want me to write about you too?
I asked, picking at the skin of my fingers nervously as the prospect of sharing my work with so many strangers terrified me. She looked at me and placed a hand on mine, her beautiful hazel eyes peering into my soul.
I want you to do it. I'll support anything you do. You know that.
She grinned.
You're the best writer I know. Come to think of it, you're the only writer I know.
I began writing at her behest. She would influence me to take on these long, fantastical tales of my past intermixed with personal ones. You know, stories about hunting aliens with her lizard friend Donnie, stories about when I'd lay in bed terrified at night as my mother's angry footsteps ascended the stairs and edged closer to my door, how I'd cry softly after and talk to Olivia about it for support. She cried a lot too during those talks. For hours on end, she would sit on my bed and continue to share stories about our life that in 10 years of friendship, I'd remembered so little about. Adventures we'd been on that I was 99% certain she made up for brevity, but I didn't mind. Spending this time together was so valuable, and it passed almost in the blink of an eye. Before I knew it, the first entry was done. A history of the girl who survived it all. And I read it to her, nervous as all hell as to how she'd interpret it. But she simply sat there in silence, her eyes darting from word to word, and I swear I could see the cogs whine in her mind, projecting the images in her head as her face was alight with joy, tears streaming as she leapt from her seat and jumped to hug me, saying thank you over and over again. My shoulder began to wet from tears.
This is going to be amazing. We are going to be amazing.
She beamed at me.
Trust me. People will love this.
Looking back, I wasn't sure why she wanted me to document her life anonymously when she was already such a character. It seemed odd to be her transcriber and not be able to tell the world that this amazing adventurer, this trendsetter steeped in light, this single note, an octave above everyone else, ringing out loud and proud beyond the realms of what barriers sound can normally never break, was the brightest light in my life, and could easily be yours or anyone else's given 5 minutes and some good food. I remember the first lecture back in class after our winter break. I walked into a rapturous applause from my classmates and my professor. They quickly walked towards me and I hesitantly looked back, assuming that they were here for something Liv had done. But no. The professor took my hand in his and smiled at me with such pure joy.
Ricarda, I don't know what possessed you to document this, but, well, it's magical. To see you, the last person to ever stand up and share their work, craft something of this caliber, it makes me so happy. You have a real talent.
The professor seemed so pleased with something I struggled to take as my own work. Were those tears in his eyes? Man, the emotional value was strong, but I wasn't expecting that. Ree, this is superb. Are you going to do a second entry anytime soon? A friend in the back called out to excited murmurs and agreements.
Of course she is. Why wouldn't she?
Liv bellowed behind me, having kicked the door open and put her hands on my shoulders with an exaggerated slap. I jumped and then nodded in agreement. The class cheered in response, and that entire lesson was spent engaging in conversation I'd have never thought possible for my awkward, anxious self before. The questions about my work filled me with a joy that only a creator could truly appreciate. That night, I'd been walking home and thinking about what we could do to write chapter 2, which we tentatively called a present-day account of the girl who made a pact. I was so lost in my thoughts and in a situation without anyone to pull me out of it, I had walked headlong into traffic, narrowly avoiding an oncoming car.
Hey, watch it, you stupid bitch!
The driver yelled at me before speeding off, obviously shaken up himself, but not nearly as much as I was at the prospect of having someone scream at me. It immediately took me back to that night just a couple years ago. The raised voices, the smashing of plates, the defiance once held in my voice as I clutched a university pamphlet in a suitcase, the ensuing whirlwind of fists, kicks and smashes before silence fell upon the building I could never hope to call home, save for my whimpering and the sounds of sirens in the distance. My knees buckled from under me and I sat against the curb, trying desperately to put my breathing under control and remember what I had learned in therapy. Think of a feather and imagine it floating. Just focus on the feather. Nothing else matters but the feather. I focused on the lightness of the yellow, furry feather as it floated gently in the wind of my mind and began to count back.
10, 9, 8.
I felt my muscles loosen just a bit, a chill coming over me.
7, 6, 5.
My breathing fell and I felt calmer, but I could hear footsteps rushing towards me.
4, 3, 2.
I didn't open my eyes, but a snarling sound began to crawl up my shoulder and into my ear, the low doldrums of malice beginning to rumble throughout my skull.
One last chance to put things right, but you're gonna fail on that front as well, aren't you? Just like you fail at being even a half-decent daughter.
I look up and see the towering, hulking mass of my mother staring back at me, her face a vile shade of yellow and her stress lines like a grill, letting evil intentions seep out of her brain and influence my thoughts. It had been a few months since I saw her, but she hadn't changed her nature one bit. She snapped her fingers and I immediately got to my feet, dusting myself off.
Oh, God, look at you. Fucking pathetic. You having a little dramatic moment? Embarrassing yourself and me in front of people? You and your spineless generation know nothing of struggle.
She spat, every word laced with barbs designed to throw me back to being a scared little girl again. She pulled a mocking cry face and pretended to wail.
Oh, it's all in my head. I'm so sad.
Watching a grown woman in her 50s behave like this, let alone it being my mother, was so utterly insulting and demeaning, but I fought back the tears and waited for her little performance to conclude, at which point, as if on cue, I'd say,
Sorry, Mom.
But no apology was ever sufficient. She made me hang my head in shame as I walked with her back to my campus, signed in at the lobby in absolute silence, and ignored everyone else asking me about my writing, if I was okay or if I wanted to grab something to eat. One guy I liked seemed especially concerned but stopped short of standing in front of me when I simply walked on a trance-like state, not daring to rise my mother's ire and embarrass myself further in front of the people I'd felt I truly became myself around. I went back to my room, and the moment I shut my bedroom door, I felt the entire room begin to sink. It's hard to explain, but it felt like the lights were dimmer. The air was stale and every footstep made me feel weaker. I sat at the edge of my bed as my mom stormed over to my desk and began rummaging incessantly for any evidence she could use to punish me, something she'd done since I was a child.
I know you have some heinous and sinful garbage here, Ricarda.
She hissed, her hands like wrecking balls smashing at the foundations of confidence I'd built in her absence. She put her hands on the drafts I'd written with Olivia, and I felt the atmosphere change. Not even the moonlight that was once peering through the curtains wanted to bear witness to her rage as she looked at the title and voraciously scanned each page, scrutinizing it for any mentions of her. She was so angry that her eyes were bulging, her face now an ugly puce as veins popped on her temples and her liver spot-ridden neck.
You dared to document what happened in that home? That sacred house that you brought shame into? Who the fuck do you think you are, young lady? I gave you life. I own you.
I felt her begin to rise above me, the room blackening and the only light seeming to come from her eyes as I sank into a curled up ball, hands pulling at my hair as I silently sobbed.
I will never forgive you for what you did in that home, the shame you brought upon me and your father when you left. You will regret this for the rest of your life. Do you understand me? I will make you bear the scars of your shame. I am never leaving your side.
She bore down on me, teeth gritted and spit flying from her face as hands stretched out to a pair of scissors on my desk, dark intentions in mind.
Well, you know something? I'm never leaving her side either.
Olivia stood there, out of breath and crouched low, a scowl on her otherwise exuberant face that painted a very different image of rage to that of my mother's, where in my mother I saw contempt, in Olivia I saw one thing and one thing only: love. Olivia leapt forward and in one motion she bit hard down on my mother's neck. She howled and screamed until Olivia pulled away and landed in front of me, shielding me from any further harm as my mother writhed on the ground and screamed like a banshee, her limbs twisting as her voice became more contorted.
I will never leave.
She gurgled, the dissonance in her voice growing more apparent as her body began to fade. I stood up, tears in my eyes and fists clenched so tight I could feel blood dripping from my palms where my nails dug in.
No, but you will be controlled. I will learn how.
I shouted, staring straight at her as I saw fear in her eyes.
I will live my life with joy and love. That is the greatest fucking victory I will ever score over you.
I felt fresh tears in my eyes as the rage rose from my stomach and exploded out of my throat, a fire of words that had long been boiling over and waiting to be uttered as I screamed at the top of my lungs.
No, fuck off, you cunt!
Her form faded and I felt the room return to normal as I sat back on the bed, breathing heavily as my face awash with tears, snot, and spit. I was an absolute mess. Olivia came up to me and gave me a hug, wiping away the tears and smiling.
You did it! I'm so proud of you, Ricarda.
I smiled and held her close to me, the smell of her hair bringing me safety and joy that I couldn't experience anywhere else in the world as I rubbed her head and said,
You're a good girl, Olivia. My best friend. That'll never change.
It was summer 2017. I had gotten accepted into a university on the West Coast and, unbeknownst to my family, it was time to leave. It was a scholarship program I'd applied to months earlier, partly in the hopes of getting a step closer to my dream job, but mostly because I was determined to escape my parents' home. I stood there, a travel case packed, Olivia with me and a friend on their way to pick me up, much to their delight, I imagine. What went on there wasn't exactly a secret in my town. I don't think I need to go into detail on the things that happened under that house prior to this night. We can safely assume that it was every bit as unpleasant as you surmise, and worse. Mom was a vindictive, pious woman who hated everything she couldn't control. And Dad liked to drink. I didn't like him when he was sober, but I was terrified of him when he was drunk. I remember when I told him I'd gotten in, pamphlet in hand and Olivia by my side for emotional support. Dad just laughed and took a deep swig from his bottle, saying,
Fuck it. Let this stupid bitch go and fail. She got herself pregnant right quick and flunked anyway. Fucking whore. But know that when you step out of the door, you ain't coming back. You hear me? This family don't accept traitors.
I stared down at him, not saying a word, my mom breathing heavily and refusing to take her eyes off the pamphlet, hands shaking. Dad threw a bottle at the wall and leapt across the room, standing nose to nose with me, the smell of alcohol on his breath enough to put a brewery up for inspection. He took one of his huge hands and gently brushed my hair away from my face.
Do you hear me, girl? When you go out of that door, well, you're fucking dead to me. To all of us. A shame, too.
He gave me a smug grin before shoving my head away and storming to the kitchen for another drink.
You can't go, Ricarda.
Mom's voice was low. Every syllable was said with intent.
I will not allow it.
I could sense Olivia getting mad, her hesitation the only thing preluding her from speaking out. But when I held a hand down and tried to stand my ground, desperate to avoid picking my own skin or showing any signs of weakness, if I could hold it together for just a few minutes, I was sure I could make it.
I'm 20 years old. This is my decision and you cannot stop me.
I stared down at her, but she began to mock me while making slow and deliberate steps towards me.
And? You think I care what you want?
She screamed, punching me hard across the face and sending me to the ground, my back hitting the coffee table and shattering glass across the floor.
Now look what you made me do.
She bellowed, grabbing the bridge of her nose as her daughter cried out in pain on the floor like it was a mess she had to clean up. Olivia ran over to me immediately, defiant and unafraid in the face of this monster. But my mom was undeterred. She picked Olivia off her feet by her throat, slamming her to the ground with ease, before kicking her hard in the stomach and sending her flying across the room.
Stupid bitch. Doesn't know that loyalty has its limits.
She spat on her before looking to me and kneeling down, eyes meeting in a tenuous moment as the creature that birthed me began to smile.
Well, Ricarda, since you're all grown up now, I guess I need to give you a coming-of-age gift. It'll be ready in a little bit for you, so take a nap.
A boot to my skull later, I was out cold. It was sometime later that I found out the night I left and went to the hospital. Charges were pressed against my mom and dad for what they'd done, but I was too traumatized to give evidence, and my therapist told the court as much. They still went to prison, and I don't think they'll be out for a long time. Not after the tapes they kept of their punishment sessions over the years. Olivia sat next to me as I held the second copy of our story in my hands. The ending showing a young, happy woman who had beaten her PTSD into submission with the help of her best friend. A loving companion in the form of a golden retriever that was the brightest light in any room, made friends with everyone she'd ever met, and was the most genuine creature Ricarda had ever encountered. The sun began to shine through my tattered room as I made a phone call to my therapist and told him I had another incident. He was the first adult I trusted after getting away from that home and was utterly vital to my recovery.
Well, I'm glad you're okay now at least. Did you do the technique we talked about last time?
He asked, his voice soft and understanding, a father figure I'd never had. I stared at Olivia, who was resting her head on mine. The pages of our imagined dialogue spilled across the pages in front of us.
Yeah, I did.
I said, sniffing and trying to hold back tears.
Good. As long as you imagine Olivia is there, you can do anything. I can't wait to see your next story entry, by the way. Please, keep bringing them to our sessions, and don't hesitate to call if you need anything.
I sit there for a few more minutes before Olivia breaks the silence, looking up at me with those big eyes that had always brought me so much comfort.
You're gonna be fine, Ricarda. You know that, right?
She asked.
I know. I can't exactly rely on this forever, can I?
I replied, knowing full well what I was doing.
I mean, these chats aren't even real. I won't get better if I take it this far. I'm still so fucking weak.
I felt the tears run down my face as she put a paw on my arm.
They were real to me. They always will be, because they mattered to you. Love kept me alive, and you will find that love again. We're kinda special like that.
She licked my face, but the tears kept coming as I wrapped my arms around her.
I'm going to miss you, Liv. So much.
I nestled my face in her fur and desperately tried to remember that smell one last time before it faded from me.
I will make sure nobody ever forgets you. I'll write every day. I'll tell everyone your stories, and I will never forget what you did for me.
I'll miss you too.
My arms passed through her frame as she bore a big smile on her face.
After all, you are all I have.